Hey, welcome back, everybody. Super excited. We're back here for episode 2 of the BroxtenDigital show. Episode 1 was awesome. Had a great time doing it, and really excited for this next episode as well. I'm joined today by Wadsworth Pilot. I'm super excited for this guest for you guys. He has a ton of value and knowledge to share, but I'll let him do the quick intro here, and he'll tell you guys a little bit more about himself.
Sure, thank you. I definitely appreciate the invite. I will try to give you a really quick intro. I feel like this intro just gets longer and longer the more experience you put together. Wadsworth Pilot have been in the marketing industry for over 10, 15 years now at this point. I did the most of my growing up at Rocket Mortgage. I did everything from email to direct mail to programmatic to brand social. And now I am with Vibe Credit Union as the Vice President of Brand and Growth and really focusing more on how to build the future marketing org for young professionals such as yourself. So just using that experience of how I kind of grew up in this industry and going back and taking a look to see what was good and what should we be keeping and what needs some updating. So the work today is really fun, but it's a lot different than the work when I started.
Definitely, it's crazy how it changes, and I will say, like us young marketers, we definitely appreciate what you and people who are doing the same thing are out there doing for us. There's so much to learn, and so much has happened before we even jump in the industry. Just people like you are really what's going to make marketing continue to be successful and move forward, which is really why I wanted you to come on the show and be able to share some value. I have a lot of students and young professionals who watch. I know you really relate with that age group too. Me and you have talked on various occasions and had some great conversations. I know one big thing we connected on immediately was you're a huge sneakerhead. So I wanted to kick off with one light question here about the sneakers. One, what's the best shoe you got in your collection? And two, what's the number one thing you got on your list right now to buy?
So the buy list is a bit long. Picking a number one out of the list of things that I want to buy is going to be really difficult. But to be honest with you, my favorite pair of shoes are Jordan 11. They are one
Classic.
of the most comfortable shoes to wear. You can wear it all day. And now, especially in my slightly elder age, and I'm on my feet a lot, and work kind of starts for me now at 7 o'clock in the morning and often doesn't end until 7 or 8 o'clock at night with committee meetings and things like that. So I'm on my feet for a really long time. So those Jordan 11s definitely help out my old knees. Jordan 1's, of course, a classic for my millennial generation. So love a good Jordan 1, but wearing a Jordan 1 for 12 hours is insane. I can't
I was
believe they
gonna
used to
say,
play basketball in those.
I know, yeah, I had a pair of ones in college, and it was like wear them out for a night and not again for a couple weeks.
Yep. I'm taking those things off in the car.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, so now we can kind of hop a little bit more into, the actual meat and potatoes of the episode here. Really want to start off with one thing that really stood out to me when just looking at your LinkedIn and kind of getting to know you. One big stereotype, I guess you could call it a stereotype, but maybe not, is just especially at Michigan State where I went to college, is that in order to kind of break into advertising or marketing and really put yourself out there, you might have to move to a large scale market like LA, New York, Chicago. And a lot of people do it, but right now rent is insane. Just, the cost of living is super high for somebody who's just starting out on an entry level salary. Whereas I was able to see that you kind of stuck around in Detroit and were able to really obviously make a name for yourself. You're sitting here as a VP now. I mean, it doesn't look like you ever left. So just kind of wanted to talk a bit more about that and kind of see, what your viewpoint was there.
Yeah, no. I mean, to me, I really staying was more of a strategy than like, I didn't settle for here and I don't want to go into kind of the regular tropes of like, oh man, Detroit hustles harder and the grit of this place I just love, all those things are true. But honestly, for me, growth is about proximity and access. And I grew up in Detroit. I understand Detroiters. I understand, kind of the metro Detroit area a lot. I did a lot of growing up here, and the best marketers are the ones that are connected to their audience. So I love being able to be in my home region, marketing, advertising, caring for, other metro Detroiters. So to me, that it was always the plan. And we have really big brands that are in, this area. I mean, when you think about banking, a lot of people don't notice because the credit union world isn't, snagging front page headlines, but this is one of the most competitive credit union markets in the country. Like we have giant credit unions the size of banks, and Vibe Credit Union is kind of battling there, but we're right around, the top 10 for biggest credit unions in the state. So I just think that, this area has so much more to offer. But I think if you kind of have the madman viewpoint of marketing, you may need to go to a Chicago or an LA, to those big markets where you're going to get kind of the glitz and the glamour and things like that. But I know a lot of people that went to New York, went to Chicago, and ended up coming right back in their 30s because it's really difficult too. It's very competitive, and unless you want marketing to become your entire life, those markets, that's what it takes in those markets. I think that the Detroit market is one that really gives that balance. I hate the phrase work-life balance. You don't stop become, for me, I don't stop becoming a father when I clock into work, and I don't stop being the VP of Vibe, brand and growth team the moment I step into the house. It's kind of all together and it should fit together. And you want to build a life that you are happy to wake up every day and live. And to me, sometimes when I'm looking at some of those faster, larger markets, I just don't see it. But I have huge mentors that have come up in Detroit, and I like what I see from the life that they have. So never even really looked that much out of state because I think we really do have everything we need here.
I mean, that is such a cool story to hear, and just kind of goes to show that really you don't have to make some crazy move to burst into advertising like a lot of people may think. I know I saw a ton of it in college of, that's kind of where the opportunities are, but now even myself, I've kind of gotten into this Detroit advertising scene and just kind of like I've seen myself, there's so much value, so many people to meet. You can obviously build a career here and have an amazing network and never really have to leave the city. And kind of like you mentioned too, it's really nice staying close to home and being able to integrate yourself with the community that you kind of are familiar with. I know
Yeah.
you've done a really good job at that and kind of built a lot of your career around community involvement. So, kind of just to get into the next point, I really wanted to just kind of walk through your early experience, what you kind of did to, like I just said, break into the community and really, make yourself an authority figure and how you were able to do that. And I know you do have a really cool story about something you did at Rocket, so I'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, again, being from Detroit, community is just naturally something that I've always been in. My mother was really big into, government work. She worked for the city of Detroit for a really long time. She worked out at Detroit um, Metropolitan Airport. So I just have a really vast experience in the community from a very young age because my parents had me out in the community a lot. So they kind of instilled those values in me really young. And I've always wanted to not just build a name, but build somewhat of a legacy here in this city. It's one of the beautiful things about Detroit that you can truly build a legacy that lasts. You can see a lot of first generation legacy builders. I mean, you look at the Dan Gilberts, the Henry Ford, like this whole place is built with stories, people being able to become, from literally zero to billionaires in one singular lifetime. So while I don't necessarily aspire to be a billionaire, I can't ignore the opportunity that's here and the people that I've seen come before me that's been able to build a real legacy. And that's what I'm attempting to do. But, getting into, some of that early career, my career is really weird because I didn't actually break into marketing. I was 27 years old when I got my very first marketing job. I had my marketing degree, but it was hard to find marketing jobs because I didn't intern at all in college. I was a terrible student, by the way, like absolutely terrible student. Marketing is really what woke me up. I was kind of sleepwalking, and then I had a really cool class that intro me into kind of the power of marketing, fell in love with it from there. But I didn't fall in love with it fast enough to save my GPA and, go and intern and do things like that. That's why I love you all and the cohort that we have at Advance because some of the questions you all ask is just insane. I'm happy that I wasn't having to compete against all of you in my early career. It would have been much more difficult for me to climb, but got into the game really late, had to prove myself in sales first at Rocket, moved over into marketing, started in email, and my thing has always been that access Community proximity really creates influence. The closer you are to the things that's happening, that is what gives you the influence you need to be able to get access into some of those rooms where real decisions are made. Now, of course, early in your career, you're not necessarily making the decisions, but just watching the decision makers, seeing how they all collaborate together or don't collaborate together, and getting to watch the results of what happens from some of those campaigns was also something that was really impactful for me early in my career. But to not make the whole show about my backstory, I can definitely get into when things started to escalate for me, and that was really when I started taking over brand social at Rocket. I had never worked in social before, had absolutely no clue about like paid media, anything like that. I came in completely blind. Now, of course, I had been on a marketing team for a long time. I had done lots of other forms of marketing, and I had kind of built up a reputation as being really curious and someone that wasn't scared to try something outside of the box. So when I got that opportunity, it was ridiculously fun. So, I mean, we're talking 2022. So, fresh out of the pandemic, TikTok still wasn't like a trusted entity yet. I was still kind of weird being so old, and yelling at everybody that I thought TikTok was going to be the next thing when people still thought it was silly. We hadn't quite gotten off of dance videos all the way, but I've always been an early adopter on new forms of, social. So I'm a kid. My freshman year in college was the very first year that the Facebook at the time leaked out of Harvard. So my freshman year was really all Facebook. Go to class, run back to the library so that you could check your Facebook wall. I was one of the first users on Instagram when that launched. I was one of the first users on Twitter when that launched. So I've just kind of always tried to keep up with it. But there was something special about TikTok that just seemed different to me. So because I had the brand social space, that's the space that I was leading at the time. We weren't on TikTok. Like Rocket actually wasn't doing anything on TikTok at all at that point. So I just started to get really curious and ask questions about why. And Rocket has huge budgets. So when you have big budgets like that, it's not hard to get reps on the phone. So I was able to speak to some amazing reps at TikTok, and we really crafted the pitch to start using TikTok at Rocket together. So I think it's just a beautiful picture of, client side at sales and then the advertising agency all working together. This wasn't something that I even remotely pulled off by myself. I would never sit here and say we pulled off that, alone. It was a group effort that I got to play a role in. But you know how now TikTok, when you open the app, there's an ad sometimes as soon as you open it. Well, that wasn't always a thing. Rocket, we actually tried that when it was still in beta. No financial services entity had ever used it, period. Rocket was the first, and I got to usher that in. So we spent an ungodly amount of money for an 18-hour spot where we would be the first thing people saw when they opened the app for 18 hours. And in one day, with that advertisement, we drove a month's worth of traffic, which when you think about how much traffic Rocket drives, to drive it in a singular day from the brand side was insane. So it really accelerated after that. Of course, TikTok is a huge platform that they, of course, lean on today, and everybody leans on at this point. But it is cool to be able to say that I was a part of the group that brought TikTok to Rocket Mortgage.
I mean, yeah, what a cool story to be able to say you did that. Now with how big TikTok is, like that is just insane that, one singular person can kind of say, "Hey, I played a huge role in this." What an insane opportunity to be able to do that and kind of have like, not everybody gets that moment in their career where they get to say, "Hey, I got to introduce TikTok to a company like Rocket." People are out there looking for those opportunities, and a lot of people, they get to the point where I've seen, they're 30, 40, pushing towards maybe the latter half of their career and haven't found that moment. I just want to ask you this. How do you kind of say you create that moment or that opportunity? What were maybe some key steps you took beforehand that kind of sets yourself up to be in that position? Because just in my experience alone, that doesn't present itself every day. There's a million, even at Rocket, you have a million other workers that are around you and have the same opportunity. How do you kind of make that yours?
Yeah, one thing that I will say, I think especially early in your career, curiosity and collaboration matter a lot more than having all the answers. So I think it's just remaining curious and not feeling like you need to know. I think sometimes a lot of young professionals feel like when they get there, they're supposed to know already. And it just creates a space where you are not pretending to know, but you really want to put yourself in positions where you know what's going on, where you feel comfortable. And I actually focused on running in the opposite direction. I always wanted to be in positions where I was uncomfortable, where I didn't know where I was doing and could learn openly. And I think when I'm learning openly and curious, I think that's when a lot of magic can happen. So I would say that you don't necessarily find these opportunities. They more so kind of present themselves. And it happens again when you're remaining curious and you're still a practitioner. You get out of school and it's like, all right, I have the knowledge I need, and now I just need experience. And it's no, you do still need to be a practitioner of the craft. You still need to be paying attention to what's going on, testing out new media, if it's your job or not. When I first started using TikTok a lot, I wasn't even on the brand media team yet. I was in partnerships. So it served no real purpose to me. I didn't have a way to connect what I was learning directly into Rocket yet, but I knew that it was important. And I knew one day that skill set, that experience on that platform would be useful to me. And when it presented itself, I was ready for it. So it's almost like one of those things where it's like, opportunity pops up and then a countdown immediately comes up, and you kind of got to be able to take advantage of it before the time runs out. So I always look at opportunity like that. Again, it presents itself. It's not necessarily created, and you have to do the work ahead of time, and you're not always going to be able to connect the dots in your head at the moment that you're learning. You just need to know what I'm learning is valuable, and I will find a way to use it in the future and be comfortable moving forward like
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on what you just said there. Just to kind of like go back over the story you just told me. I mean, you're mid 20s, never done social media professionally before, and then there you are running Rockets brand social, which is, an insane responsibility and probably a job that there's a lot of people younger than me that are, that's their dream job one day. And it just goes to show, that continued education and staying curious is really what does propel you ahead. I've even noticed in my short career that just being somebody who constantly is keeping up with trends, constantly keeping the new information in my feed, it's just putting me ahead already. And I definitely would recommend it to anybody listening. But to kind of jump away from the 9 to 5 more so, there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of your just day job that kind of has a huge effect on your career. I've already kind of witnessed it with joining AdCraft and the Advanced program, which obviously huge thank you to you for helping set that up, and AdCraft. Anybody out there who's in the Detroit scene that's not an AdCraft definitely should join. It's a great organization full of great people that love networking and helping each other out. But to kind of get into more what I was going to ask, just what were some things that, outside of your 9 to 5 you were able to do, whether it was community, professionally, education wise, that you did and would maybe recommend doing that kind of, help propel yourself to that VP position you're sitting in now?
I tell a lot of young professionals, jobs give you experience, but community is the thing that accelerates you. And experience without acceleration is nothing. There's plenty of people with lots of experience that didn't necessarily get the acceleration they were looking for. You're looking for that visibility. Visibility builds trust a lot faster than resumes. So getting out there and having people understand who you are and what you stand for and your temperament and your level of discernment and all of those soft skills that's kind of hard to understand just by looking at a resume or something like that. It's always going to be beneficial for you to have more people that know you in that way than less people. So that's truly what you want. And that community piece, that after the 9 to 5 part, is so important because you can also get trapped in jobs too. I mean, if your only network, and I ran into this a bit because Rocket is so huge. There was a moment where my entire audience was really just Rocket folks. It was really difficult for me once my rocket career ended to kind of transition my audience and start to bring in more people from the community, from the credit union community. So, yeah, just making sure that you are out there and taking advantages of opportunities to do things in real life with real people where they know your face, they know the sound of your voice, and again, they know what you're about is always going to be beneficial to you. And again, I would say just as beneficial as the experiences that you can put together. It is definitely not a step to be skipped if advancement beyond like senior individual contributor is what you're looking for. I think that there's almost no path past that without actually building a pretty solid network.
I mean, that makes a ton of sense. And one thing I mentioned was that the ad craft bit at the beginning there. That's another thing I know you've gotten really involved in, and has been another big part that I'm sure has kind of grown your audience. And I'm sure you've networked a lot through that. Would love to just kind of get your spiel on ad craft and maybe just where the value is in it for you and anybody else who's listening.
Yeah, so here I will share a little something that not many people know about me. I am a huge wrestling buff. Like this goes all the way back to like 2 years old with my great aunt watching like Hulk Hogan or people, So it's just been something that has been a part of my life forever. The big thing in wrestling is long term storytelling. They intentionally plant seeds so that, a storyline can live. And sometimes they have storylines that are 1, 2, 3 years long. So after my Rocket career ended, I really started putting together like who did I want to be? What was the brand of Wadsworth? Who is that guy? And what type of things does that person do? So again, I'm somebody that's in my community a lot. So I definitely wanted an outlet or something to kind of publicly show my community roots. So I serve on the Boston Edison Association board. That's my neighborhood board. Those are my neighbors. We're kind of hand in hand working through kind of protecting the historic legacy of our neighborhood. And then you have ad craft. I want to be known as a practitioner. I'm somebody I don't shy away from saying that I want to be one of the best. Like, I want to do this in a way that is not the beaten path, is not just the way that the textbook tells you to do it. I want to do this thing my way, and I want to go as far as I can go with it. So, what AdCraft represents for me is the opportunity to be it's almost twofold. So, there's so many people that have achieved so much more than me on that ad craft board. Well, now I get more access to them and I get to pick their brain and understand their journey and understand the pitfalls that are in front of me. I'm a new executive. I just finished my rookie year of being an executive, and I'm telling you, it kicked my ass. I'm not sure if I'm able to say that on here, but it was a
No, be
difficult
real.
year. Yeah, it was a difficult year for me. And if I didn't have some of the folks on AdCraft that I could run to and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm going through, it would have been a lot worse for me. But then the other piece is, again, part of my job here is building the marketing org of the future. Well, young professionals like yourself are going to be the ones that are going to occupy those spots. So I also get connectivity to you all to be able to understand what your challenges are. So as I sit in these advanced meetings and I listen to the questions that you all are asking, the experiences that you all are explaining, I'm making those mental notes like, oh, this would be a good thing to do. This would be something that I wouldn't want to be a thing in my organization. So I'm taking notes with you guys, almost like you guys are taking notes with the speakers. So it really does benefit me to do this, but it also is a way for me to give back to a profession that's been, this is my livelihood. Um, and it's done a lot for me, and a lot of people invested time into me to get me to the point to where I am. So for me, it was always this quest of repaying the kindness of a lot of my mentors by playing it forward. So to be able to get to do some all of that stuff in like one organization, it was a no-brainer for me. But being on the board, that part, it wasn't the plan. I didn't call and say, "Hey, I want to be on the board." I called a couple people that I knew, told them that I was interested in serving and getting back involved and working towards being on the board. But again, I had worked with so many of them. They knew who I was. They knew the reputation I had and were willing to allow me to, hop on the board and begin to serve. And, I'm about 6 months into it, and am just learning so much every day about how work in, the Metro Detroit area gets done. It's ridiculously fascinating, very tiring, but very, very rewarding.
I really like how you said that you want to be the best, and I definitely share that competitive edge with you. But the approach you've taken of doing it in a way where you're involved in the community, you're actively bringing others up and paying forward your mentorship is super cool. And you just, I feel like, don't see that enough just out in the world, even maybe not in our industry. A lot of very competitive, want to be the best people. But, if you're not doing the inputs the right way, I really think you end up on the other side. You might have all the money, but if you're not happy and just not living the life you want to do, what good is that money? One thing that you said in our last conversation that obviously wasn't recorded that really resonated with me was that you set your life up in a way to where everything you did was kind of a win-win. It played towards your personal brand. It was also something that you're happy to do and enjoy doing. And I really just think, especially at this point in my career and anybody else listening, that's really what you should do. Set things up to where you're one, gaining experience and growing your network, but at the same time you're helping people out and doing what you enjoy and love too. Obviously, as we can see here with Wadsworth, that's where true growth really happens. And to kind of talk more on that, you talked a little bit about coming into your role at Vibe and kind of the nuances and hardships might have that came with that. But I did get to visit your place, a place of work, and was super cool. I've met a couple of your team members. I have some on LinkedIn as well. It seems like you guys just have an awesome environment there. I know the finance sector typically kind of gets like a boring memo, but I actually just saw a video on LinkedIn of a life-size cutout of you. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, no, I actually wore this today because this is what I was wearing in the cutout. Like, first off, my team, like, I learned something about my team that day that they can keep a secret from me for a really long time. This was like 6 months in the making. When I first started working here at the credit union, I was yelling to everybody, like, where are the calendars at? Like, what I remember about credit unions from a young age is that they gave calendars away. That's not necessarily a practice anymore now that we have calendars on our phones and everywhere else. But I was yelling about wanting a calendar. Like, I want to make a calendar. I want to make a calendar. So the team got together and said they were going to make me a one of one calendar. They told me that I was posing ridiculously for the new our newsletter. And so I did the polls, but I told myself that I wasn't going to look at the newsletter because I just did not want to see what they did with me in that poll. I really should have looked because I wouldn't have seen myself and figured out something was up. But the team, they took it home. I was a part of a Harry Potter watch-a-thon. I was a part of a bonfire. I've been all the way to almost Toledo. Like that cutout has been everywhere. It's been to a cycling class, all of that stuff. But what I love most about it is really what it represents. It represents a team that is, locked in together, that's having fun together, that is finding a way to build a community. I think that the last generation or two, they really overuse the word family. Oh, we're a family here at this place. And now it's almost a red flag to say we're like a family here. Um, so I won't necessarily say we're like a family here, but we are like a group of individuals that all like the same things as far as doing something meaningful for our community, and we collaborate really great together, and we enjoy getting up in the morning and coming to work together. And the output of that, I believe, is incredible marketing. When I was at Rocket, I watched one of the best, form, our marketing team. Now that marketing team was huge. It was 200 of us, 250 of us. But the way that he did it was through kindness and presence and curiosity and making sure his people were taken care of. Again, this is just me kind of emulating my heroes in the craft and trying to do my best rendition of a 2026 version of what I saw them do.
I mean, it just goes to show that LinkedIn video is kind of my first large impression on your team, but it just goes to show that when you really put the effort into building a culture, that it kind of comes to pay out on the other end, where you maybe might not see the value in it when you're putting in the hard work and building that culture. And this might be some advice to people your age as well as people my age, but obviously you've built the culture at Vibe. What's the secret?
I'm going to deflect some of that compliment there. And so our chief of branding growth, her entire philosophy is that, marketing is built upon culture. So when I interviewed here, I interviewed with the chief of branding growth and the then director of community engagement. I wanted this job from like the moment I stepped out of that door because what they're building here, what they're attempting to do is something that I want to be a part of. And again, they're leading with culture, they're leading with putting the member first. And I love being a part of organizations where the work feels just as good as, all the benefits and things that come along with the work. So um they I owe them a lot of credit for kind of building this culture. I just get to come and be ridiculously curious and run around and make a mess in the culture that they've built that really resonates with me. So part of it is about where you land at and making sure that you're landing somewhere where you actually want to be and you can see yourself flourish. um, when I took this, I had like four offers on the table, and the ranges were all over the place. So when I took this one, we didn't make this for a money reason. We didn't make this for any other reason other than I really believed in what they were doing. I really believed that my career was going to grow the fastest and in the direction I wanted here. So it made the decision clear for me to come in and join this group. But I will say the piece that I've tried to do here in being additive to the culture is really letting people work more autonomously. And I know that that word, again, has become somewhat of a buzzword, but people have jobs and I trust my people to do their jobs. I'm not over their backs. I'm not, looking over their shoulder constantly. I'm trusting. And, sometimes that lands us in a situation where we have to be creative to get out of it, but we're all learning together. Again, I'm learning how to be an executive just as much as the team is learning how to kind of live in this universe that we're all building together. So just group learning, transparency. When I make a mistake, I'm the first one to stand up and take accountability in front of the group. When something doesn't go right, I'm the first one to kind of step up and raise my hand like, hey, this is on me. I've always wanted to be a kind of the buck stops with me type of guy. Again, I'll go back to my mentors. That's how they were. So just again, imitating the greats.
Well, clearly it's been working for you. Like I said earlier, I loved everything I saw at Vibe, and have just had great positive interactions with everybody I've met from there. Especially you. I mean, being somebody who's a VP, and even just taking the time to have those couple side conversations we had, and then obviously come on here and do this. Like, it's just obvious that you are really willing to give back and are really looking to help inspire the youth. With that though, it's not going to be long before people my age are in these VP positions and are moving up the ranks. So I'd love to just kind of dive a bit deeper into your just experience so far as VP. I know you said you're kind of fresh to it, and this first year was like, obviously you did great, but at the same time, I'm sure there were some hardships and stuff you learned. Would love to just kind of hear your perspective on what you think is important to know, kind of as you've escalated to this VP role.
Yeah, no, I was just telling a couple people a week or so ago that I'm a little bit sad because I don't feel like my job is really marketing anymore. I spend more time thinking about marketers versus marketing. So it really is about creating the environment. What creates the best environment for work to be done? I'm not necessarily doing the work. I'm influencing the marketers that's doing the work. And again, how do I do that in a way that makes work feel good and makes the team feel accomplished and things like that? So I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So the biggest shift for me in jumping into executive leadership is that you no longer touch the work. And that part is really, really difficult for me because I was an individual contributor 18 months ago. So I had my finger on the pulse of all the work just 18 months ago. And now again, I have a couple of reviews that I do for the work because I do like to see all the work that goes out. But when it comes to concepting all of that stuff, I trust my people. And again, we're learning the lessons together.
Yeah, you definitely said it's sad, and I can imagine it is. You start getting so wrapped up into what you're doing on a daily basis, and the deliverables that you own kind of become like your baby in a sense. But that's so cool to kind of hear that you've built that team that you can trust and have a team that you can kind of back on and rely on. I know not all executive leaders have that and are kind of scrambling to just kind of make ends meet on a daily basis with maybe a short staff team or something. What would be your advice to that group of people who maybe isn't in the perfect position, didn't join a great culture? What's something that maybe if you were in that position or have seen that you can do as an individual to kind of maybe get yourself out or improve that situation?
Okay, so this is the point where I'm going to say something that might get me in a little bit of trouble, but I'm just going to be harsh to everybody. So all parties can get a little bit of harshness. There are a lot of bad managers out there. It's just the truth. And if you can't work with a bad manager, it's going to be really hard to progress because at some point in every marketing professional's career, you're not going to necessarily have the warm and fuzzies for your boss all the time. And learning how to operate in those systems, in those situations is going to be important. This is why I hate tip culture and guru culture to a degree because they give you the best case scenario list. If all things are fair and equal, this is the list of things that can get you where you want to go. But really, what marketers have to become is really good readers of the room. You have to understand what you're dealing with, what you're working with in real time sometimes to be able to react fast enough and to pick up on what's truly going on around you. So, bad management is almost a given. All of you are going to have bad managers and you're going to have to find a way to deal. The answer is not to always run and quit because you may just end up going to another place where you don't have a great boss. You really just have to figure out how to continue to grow yourself. Your growth is your responsibility, no one else's. Now, again, you will have those great bosses that will take you under their wings, make things easier, clear that path for you. But just in case you don't get that, you can still get to success as well. You're just going to have to do it in a way that looks a little bit differently. So I think that, people managers need to do better, just flat out. And then young professionals need to start developing a little bit thicker skin on sitting in uncomfortable situations. And that's part of experience that'll come along with it. Again, when I was young in the industry as well, I really struggled with, managements in spots where it wasn't the best. But again, you figure out how to move forward, you figure out how to learn and take ownership for your own career. It's never if you didn't end up where you wanted to end up, don't blame your boss. Like it's you. You're responsible for you.
Yeah, I love what you said there. Something that's been really big for me in 2026 that I've written up on my wall and just try to focus on every day is that the position I'm in is 100% my fault. There's nothing anybody else did to put me here. I'm here because of the choices that I made. And it's honestly like four or five choices that puts you in the position that you're in. So just kind of accepting that. And, sometimes you like, I know when I first did it at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh man, I probably could have made a couple changes and, been in a really different position to kind of end my college career or be starting, this first year out of school. So yeah, that's just definitely something to focus on throughout all aspects of your life, I think. But that kind of rounds out this section of the show where we're going to walk through some more of the longer form stuff and really want to just get into your experience. And it was so cool kind of learning a little bit more of your backstory and even a little bit more about what you're doing now. I was super curious about that myself, and I can't wait to see what some others think about it. But now I just want to get into a little bit more of like a rapid fire segment. We'll
Yeah,
just go
let's
through
do
some
it.
questions and just whatever comes to mind. Would love to hear just some straight raw advice. From our first VP on the show. So first one I had written down for you here is just one tip that you would say is the best way to get noticed by directors and VPs on LinkedIn for students and young pros right now.
It would be don't try to be impressive, be useful. Bringing value. That's the thing. Well, this is rapid fire, so I
You
could
you can
talk
go
your
into
ear
it if
off
you have
about
some.
this.
If you have a quick little thing, go feel free. We can totally talk more about these. We're doing great on time.
Yeah, no, I just think that one, I don't think that young professionals necessarily need the attention of directors and VPs fresh out the gate. You need to be building connections with your peers because really you all are going to kind of be on the same trajectory until, you all are like 5 years in. And then that's where, the superstars of the peer group will elevate a bit faster and there'll be a bit more parity in where everybody is. But the people that I lean on the most are the people that I kind of came up with side by side. One of the people that I run to first is somebody I went to college with. So it's like that's how far back it goes. So really, I think directors and VPs are a little bit overrated. We're slow to answer. Sometimes we won't answer at all just because of how many emails and reach outs you're getting. It's really hard to have, you know, conversations of substance as some of these things. So people are trying to shove so much impressiveness into one interaction. What I love the most, and this has happened several times at Advance, where I've met several of you all, and there's been a reach out to connect on LinkedIn. Now, I am terrible with LinkedIn messages and connections and all of that stuff. I literally give myself like a 10-minute time frame on the platform every day to scroll, maybe do a post or so. So I rarely kind of go over there. But what'll happen is in another meeting, that same, professional will ask a really good question to where now I'm like, I really like that question. Who is this? And now I look them up on LinkedIn and they've already sent that connection. So now I accept the connection and this is organically happening. What I feel like is happening is their favors. Hey, you're a young professional. You came up to me at this event. You asked me to connect on LinkedIn. I then connect with you because, again, it's the kind thing to do. But then we never interact again. And it's like, well, what value does that bring? It doesn't bring any value to either one of us. So, again, I love the organic relationships where you all, you introduce yourself, you continue to be impressive, and that relationship kind of comes together organically. And I think that those are the ones that can last, your career long and even longer than that sometimes, versus those surface level ones where it's kind of obvious that, hey, they're coming up to you because you have a good title and, they're looking really to extract a little bit more than just knowledge. And that sometimes feels a little bit off. But I will say, at least in my experience over the course of the last few months, again, with the advanced cohort, you all are just ridiculously impressive. I remain impressed, and a lot of us do. We talk about it often on our, committee calls with just how impressed we are with all of you. So, again, what you all are doing is great work. And this is why I feel like it took me until I was 39 to get a VP job. I do not think it's going to take a lot of you all that long to get there. So, really, really excited and happy to be connected with you all and get to watch your careers kind of take off LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's so cool. And that's honestly my bad. I set you up for a long form answer with such a good question. How could you answer that with a short rapid fire response, you know? This next one, though, you definitely will be able to. I'm sure you see a lot of resumes, a lot of applications, or even a lot of people reaching out to you and saying, hey, Wadsworth, can you hire me? We're friends from a long time ago. But what is one instant reject on a resume or portfolio that somebody might not realize?
I would say like vague responsibilities with no outcome where it's really difficult to tell what like you actually did. Like you are applying for an associate, media manager role, and you're talking about, hey, I ran a multi-million-dollar campaign and it saw, a 40% spike in sales. Well, it's like obviously you didn't do that yourself because nobody does all of that themselves. What part did you do? And I always want to separate individuals from the group work to just what was your role? What part did you do and how did you do that better than average to really make yourself stick out or help that increase that you're claiming? I really want to be able to tie the dots in between the two. So whenever I see really vague resumes that just have a bunch, you can kind of tell when AI has written it, they have that pattern that's just kind of there. Those are instant rejects for me, even though I'll admit, and this is maybe good information for the listeners, I don't see many. By the time I see resumes, they've already gone through my HR team and they've already kind of scraped out a lot of that. So the ones that I'm seeing are really the ones that have already impressed my HR team. So We have a really good HR team here, so there's rarely any rejects from resumes that I see these days.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, it sounds like you have a great HR team then, and obviously
Yeah.
are doing the right things recruitment wise if you're getting some of those good recruits coming in. Moving into the next one though, kind of switching point of views here into the interviewee. What would you say is the number one question that the interviewee should ask when they're given the opportunity at the end?
I'm going to answer this a bit nebulously on purpose. I want to hear questions that prove that you understand what I'm looking for, both like the job itself, but when you're in an interview and you're talking, the interviewer kind of gives these clues as to what they're actually looking for. And I love when folks are able to pick that up and reflect that back to me in a question that kind of proves that they understand what I'm getting at. I love that piece. Now that's a bit nebulous, and I know that people hate nebulous advice when it comes to interviews, but this is also the truth. These score sheets and things like that, yes, we will use score sheets to be able to kind of judge people, universally, but the soft skills, the discernment, things like that, there is no score for those things. And we definitely want to have, those A players that understand nuance, can read rooms quickly, can reflect back to you, what you're looking for. Now, again, it's not the only way to have a killer question, but I love when I get questions like that. I also love, what does success look like in this role 6 months from now? I hate 30, 60, 90, but 6 months out, still I can be a little bit nebulous. And a 30, 60, 90, it's like, hey, that's really close. And I don't necessarily want to be held accountable for what I tell you in this interview because I probably haven't all the way built that out yet. Because I love to make it dependent on who I hire, how I handle the first, 90 days of employment. But I do like the what does success look like in this role 6 months from now. So if we're looking for a general question, that would be my one. But please, please try to reflect back what you feel like they're looking for in a question as well. Those are killer questions. I love them.
That is some great advice, and I would definitely listen up to that. Those questions at the end, a lot of people sleep on them, in my opinion. And I've even just heard some interviews where they're just very vague. How's the culture? What kind
Yeah.
of benefits? How's the work life balance? You said you hated that. I think most other people in your position probably do as well. That's kind of your last opportunity to leave a lasting impression, in my opinion. And everything you just said there just completely hit the nail on the head there.
This
Getting
is
into the
what I'll
next one
say
though.
really quick before we
Yeah, yeah.
move on, because I don't dislike questions like that either. Just make sure that you actually care about the answer and you're not just asking me that question to fill air. If that's going to help you in your decision making on whether you're going to take this job or not, definitely ask those questions. But again, if you're just asking the question to fill air, then no, like that is not an impressive enough question. You should choose another one if you don't actually care about the answer.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Moving into the next one though, kind of similar vibe here on this one. We talked about the LinkedIn reach out and kind of some interview stuff. And I know you mentioned that you really like the in-person introduction. A lot of times that leads to you seeing a LinkedIn request and maybe doing some messaging back and forth, which can be really intimidating, especially for people my age. We kind of grew up in those key developmental years when we were in high school and early college. A lot of us were locked away in our houses or
Yeah.
basements. And the only conversation you were getting was with maybe a professor on Zoom, and that definitely wasn't doing much. So what would you say is the best way now for a young pro to like kind of break out of that shell and just an easy way for them to go out and introduce themselves to somebody like you in person when they see you out in public?
Yeah, I think it's about giving context. Like who you are, what you're learning, what you're curious about. I think those things can really capture the intrigue of senior leaders. And, when you come up, hey, I'm so and so, I majored in this and I work here. It's like, okay, yeah, we may be able to connect off of that, but there's a big chance that we won't. I've never worked for an agency. So if you came up to me like, hey, I work at this agency and do this, like we aren't going to be able to connect very much. But if you come up and you talk about, again, who you are, what you're currently learning, and what you're curious about, well, now it's going to be a lot easier for me to jump in there and for us to actually be able to connect. But the goal is to actually connect, not this digital connection that we're all obsessed with. We need an actual connection. So to do that, context must be given. And I find that when, I meet folks that kind of go in with that mentality, it always ends up well. And to be honest, I'm still introducing myself to CMOs and people that are much more senior to me. And that's how I approach it. Again, giving them something to kind of cling on to.
That just goes to show that really the whole networking and learning aspect of our industry really never ends. You're always going to be doing it, so why wouldn't you get good at it now? And I know I asked this right before you answered, but just like how do you do that as a young professional? I think one other thing that I've kind of realized too is that the situation we were brought up in is really weird and puts us in this weird position. You kind of just gotta like suck it up and rip the band-aid off. It sucks to say, and like it's not the nicest, but you just got to walk up and introduce yourself, and you're probably going to bomb the first 10 times you do it, and you might sound really shaky and say the wrong thing, but by the time you're on number 20 you're going to be able to do your elevator pitch with your eyes closed. Like, you just have to do it, in my opinion. Would you say that's kind of what you've seen in your experience as well?
It's 100% what I've seen. And this is the truth. It will turn off some senior leaders. I would say that those probably aren't senior leaders you want to be connected to anyway. I would hope that everybody would see that and understand, like, we all sat in those seats too. So I was brand new in ad craft and in this professional sphere, and I was afraid to introduce myself to folks, and I bombed a lot. My thing, I always go too far. I'm trying to be too impressive. So when I say don't be impressive, it's because, hey, that is what I was doing. My thing was always, I want to leave a lasting impression with a crazy idea that they can really sink into. And then you just babble on and on and on, and you're doing all this talking, and the leader that you're there to kind of connect with isn't doing any talking. But yeah, it can get really, really weird. But you just got to rip that band-aid off, like you said, and jump in and do your best. You're not going to be good at it, but if you're not going to try things that you're not good at, you aren't going to have that good of a career. It's just the truth. It's just the reality of the situation. So you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I hate when people say that, but in this instance, it's definitely true.
Definitely. And then last one here for our little rapid fire segment. But what would you say right now for all of our seniors in college out there that are about ready to start their first job hunt, actually, if they're graduating this semester? What would you say is the number one skill they can add right now that will help them to kickstart their career in their first role?
I think it's the ability to clearly explain what you're thinking. That piece, it goes a lot further than people would think. And I don't know how much people think about how well they can articulate themselves in situations where you can't really prepare. So, again, if you're at an event and you want to talk to somebody, well, you may not have known this person was coming. You're making this up on the fly. So, again, just being able to compose yourself, calm yourself down, and clearly articulate what you're thinking is super important. And that's something that you can start doing in school right away by, again, raising your hand more often, taking those opportunities to be the person in the group who presents, putting yourself on that stage and getting used to speaking and people looking back at you, which is, again, it never gets not weird, but it is probably one of the primary skills that I would say got me here is my ability to communicate, my ability to share what I'm thinking, and to inspire others with what I'm thinking.
Definitely. And you obviously weren't just born with those skills. That's something you have to develop and have to do. And it just goes back to what you agreed on of you just got to rip off the band-aid and do it. That's the only way you get better at those skills. There's not an online course that teaches you how to come up with something on the fly at a ad craft event when you're talking to a
Yeah.
VP. You just got to do it. Now we can just kind of move in. I just had one closer question. This was always the question when I did one-on-ones in college with professionals that I would always ask them, and I found so much value in it. And that would just be, so if you could go back to when you're sitting in the chair as a senior, maybe in the position like I am, where you're in your first or second role, just really trying to figure things out and figure out what you want to do, where you want to end up. What's the one thing that you would have done differently? And just to go a little deeper, how would you have done it differently, and what kind of difference would that have made now in your career?
You know, I always struggle with this question because I really love the journey that I took. Now, you definitely could have caught me in some pockets where it's like, oh, I really don't like this. I really wish I did this differently. But once you kind of start looking at how everything connects, it's like, man, if I change any of that stuff, I have no clue if I would be here right now. That may have helped my short term situation. But to be honest, I probably wasn't going to elevate anymore at Rocket. I had been there 11 years. I was in a senior position and the organization was already kind of changing. So I had reached my pinnacle with this organization. I needed to leave. Like it had to happen. I would love to go back and change some things in the last 2 years of my Rocket career just from a like to be a high performer and to succeed at all the things that I do. But honestly, I don't want to go and change that because I probably wouldn't be here. I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't be leading this team. And I mean, right now I have aspirations to, radically change how marketing is done in credit unions, period. And that again gets me up in the morning and I don't want to aim at anything else like that. I love that. So I don't know how many things I would really change. I may take more risk. I love risk taking. I'm a big measure your yard. Like when you look at your job, you have the autonomy to take some risk in there in places. Now, if you mess up, you got to be accountable for those. So you got to take measured risk, calculated risk, strategic risk, but you should still be taking risks. Don't do the job just the way, it's always been done. You should be asking yourself, how can I do this job differently in a way that's safe, that won't get me fired if I mess up, but has a good return if I actually succeed in it. So I would probably do that a lot more. I would be a lot less concerned about fitting in and having the respect of every single one of my coworkers. I've always been somebody that my aspiration has always outpaced my execution. And it's really hard to be somebody like that because people look at you and say, like, oh, he's really loud. He's really confident. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And they're right in all of those instances. The thing is I'm not going to continue to not know what I'm talking about. I'm going to be rapidly learning. And if you blink too long, I'm going to learn right beyond you. And I've again tried to make a career out of learning fast and putting myself in situations where I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I just got to figure it out. And some of my best work has been in figuring things out where I thought I was totally screwed.
Definitely. I mean, to anybody listening, that's the best advice I've heard, and have heard it from different angles from a lot of different people who are sitting in really high positions. You got to be able to take risks and also be able to calculate them. Though sometimes I've seen people take that risk and it kind of ruins their career, and they end up doing something else if you don't calculate. So just kind of having that balance and being able to recognize it's what you need to do is a super hard skill to have. But once you kind of figure it out, obviously it works out for you. But that was some awesome advice. Great question to end it on, in my opinion. It's just some great takeaway to kind of walk away. And, you have some stuff that you can do now. You can start implementing some of the stuff Wadsworth was talking about this week in your day to day as a student or a young pro. And I guarantee, especially if you say, let's do it for the whole 2026, by the end of the year, you're going to be sitting in a way different position than you probably thought you would. And it's going to be a lot better. So I would definitely just take everything he says very seriously. And it's not every day you get to hear direct insights from a VP of a marketing team. So I would definitely just take everything he says to heart. Wadsworth Pilot on LinkedIn. Any other socials you'd like to plug?
No, LinkedIn is really the primary one. And just like a closing thought, and I'll keep it really, really brief. But after talking to a lot of young professionals, if I had to like, this is the one thing that I want to leave all of you with, it really is that like careers aren't built by chasing titles. Like careers are built by becoming useful in rooms that matter. And that's where that discernment comes in with what rooms matter. You have to be responsible for making that decision for yourself. Now, you shouldn't make it in a silo. You should make it with peers and mentors and things like that. But that's what this career is about, becoming useful in rooms that matter. If you do that on a continuous basis, I can almost guarantee you will have an amazing marketing career here in Metro Detroit.
Definitely. And that is some awesome advice to leave it on. One last little actionable thing to go take and do to implement this year for everybody listening. But thanks again, Wadsworth. I know you're a super busy guy, have a ton going on. Really appreciate you taking the time to hop on the show with me, have this awesome conversation. I really hope some students and marketers really find some value in it. And I know they will, just based off of what we talked about. But just really thanks again. And I know it's not easy to carve out 2 hours out of your evening. So it's been awesome talking with you. And to everybody listening, hit up Wadsworth on LinkedIn. He shares some awesome stuff, and you might get a little sneak peek into all the cool stuff they're doing at Vibe Credit Union.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. That's a wrap. Have a great one, everybody.